It had been years since John had last seen her. In fact, he hadn't thought about her much at all. Life had gone on, as it often does. Yet today, as he sat in his small apartment, he couldn't help but feel the heavy weight of nostalgia settle on his shoulders. He looked down at the old photograph in his hands. It was a picture of the two of them, the last time they'd been together. They were smiling, laughing, carefree, as if the world couldn't touch them. But that was before everything changed. That was before she left. John ran his fingers over the edges of the photo, feeling the soft paper against his skin. He had been younger then, more naive. She had been his whole world at that moment. But things hadn't worked out. Life had other plans. They'd said goodbye with promises to stay in touch, but time and distance slowly eroded those promises. And now, years later, he found himself holding this photo, as though it was the only piece of the past he had left. A sudden vibration from his phone broke his train of thought. His heart skipped a beat as he glanced at the screen. There it was, her name. Maya. His fingers trembled as he tapped on the notification. The message was short, almost too brief. It read, "Hey John, I hope you're doing well. Can we meet? I have something important to tell you." Maya. John blinked. He stared at the message, trying to process it. Why now? After all these years? She had disappeared from his life without a trace, and now she was asking to meet him. His mind raced with 1,000 questions. What could be so important? Was it a mistake? Was it some sort of closure she needed, or was it something more? He shook his head as though trying to clear his thoughts. No, it couldn't be a mistake. She wouldn't have reached out like this after so long if it was just for closure. There had to be something more. But what? He glanced at the clock. It was getting late, but he couldn't just ignore it. He had to see her, had to know what this was about. He quickly typed a reply. Sure, when and where? His phone buzzed almost instantly with her reply. How about the cafe we used to go? So, 7 p.m. It's been a long time. John's heart thudded in his chest. That cafe, the place where they had spent hours talking, laughing, dreaming of the future. It felt like a lifetime ago. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and left his apartment. His mind was racing, trying to anticipate what was about to unfold. Why now? Why had she come back into his life after so much time? At exactly 7 p.m., John arrived at the cafe. It hadn't changed much. Soft, warm lighting, the familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air, the hum of quiet conversation surrounded him, but his thoughts were far from peaceful. He scanned the room looking for her. She was always on time, he remembered, always the punctual one, but today he wasn't sure what to expect. He took a deep breath and walked to their usual table near the window. It had been their spot, the place where they had spent hours talking about their dreams and hopes. He sat down, trying to calm the flutter of nervous energy in his stomach. He hadn't felt this nervous in years. Minutes ticked by, but there was no sign of her. He checked his phone again. No new messages. Was she going to show up? Was this a mistake? Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she'd just come to get some closure. Some kind of closure he wasn't ready for. He didn't know what he was expecting, but he definitely didn't want to face the reality of a cold, awkward meeting. Just as he was about to stand up and leave, he heard the familiar sound of the cafe door opening. He looked up, and there she was, Maya. She stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room, her eyes landing on him. His breath caught in his throat. She hadn't changed much. She was still the same woman he remembered, but there was something different in her eyes, more mature, more self-assured, she had always been beautiful, but now there was an elegance to her presence that took his breath away. She smiled softly, and for a moment, it felt like time stood still. The years that had passed seemed to melt away. John felt the rush of memories flood back. So many moments of joy and laughter, shared secrets and whispered promises. But also the pain of their parting, the unanswered questions that had lingered for so long. "Hey," Maya said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "It's been a while." John nodded, his voice caught in his throat for a moment. "Yeah, it really has." She walked toward him and John stood up to greet her. He didn't know what to say. There were so many things he wanted to ask, so many things he needed to know, but he didn't want to rush her. Not yet. Maya sat down, looking at him with a mix of apprehension and something else, something that John couldn't quite place. She seemed different, but still so familiar. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The weight of time hung between them and the silence was thick with unspoken words. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "I know this is out of the blue," she said, her eyes meeting his. "But there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago." John felt his heart race again. There it was, the reason she wanted to meet him. He leaned forward, his curiosity getting the best of him. "What is it, Maya?" he asked, his voice low. She took a deep breath, her gaze lingering on his for a moment before she spoke again. "John," she said softly, "I've never forgotten you, and I've never stopped thinking about the last time we were together. The thing is," she paused and John could see the hesitation in her eyes. She wasn't just here for small talk. She had something important to say, something that was clearly weighing on her. And then, in that quiet cafe with the world moving around them, the suspense began to build. What was she about to say? What was this all leading to? The cafe was quiet, almost too quiet, as Maya sat across from John, her hands clasped tightly around her coffee cup. She looked nervous, as though she was holding something back, something important. John sat motionless, unable to take his eyes off her. This was the woman he had once shared everything with, the woman who had been a part of his life in ways that still felt like yesterday. And yet, after all this time, she was still a stranger in many ways. The years had changed them both. But, in some ways, this moment felt just like the past, just like the last time they were together so many years ago. The silence between them grew heavier with every passing second. John felt a pang of discomfort, unsure of how to break it, unsure of what Maya wanted from him. She had seemed so sure when she asked to meet, so determined. But now, sitting across from him, she appeared hesitant, unsure of how to begin. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Maya looked up from her cup, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "John," she started, her voice trembling, ever so slightly. "I know this might sound crazy. I haven't seen you in years. I didn't even know where to begin, what to say, but here I am." John's heart skipped a beat. There it was again. The old magic in her voice, the one that had always been able to melt him in an instant. He could feel the weight of her words, already, even before she had spoken them. "What are you trying to say, Maya?" John asked softly, his voice betraying the storm of emotions inside him. "What's this all about? Why now?" Maya looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting around, her coffee cup. She wasn't avoiding his gaze, but the way she seemed to gather her thoughts made it feel like she was preparing to say something monumental. She hesitated, biting her lower lip before continuing. "I've been carrying this around for a long time, John. It's something I should have said a long time ago, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if I ever would. And I thought maybe time had healed the things I felt for you. But the truth is, I've never really let go. And today, well, I think it's time I stop running from it." John furrowed his brow, confused but intrigued. "Running from what? What do you mean?" Maya exhaled deeply as though trying to steady herself before the words tumbled out. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I know it sounds crazy, but I keep remembering the way we were, the way you made me smile, the way you made me feel safe, loved, even when life was hard. We were good together, weren't we?" John didn't respond immediately. He was caught in the rush of emotions that Maya's words brought up. Those old memories, the ones he had buried beneath layers of time, the laughter, the tenderness, the way they'd been there for each other. She was right. They were good, together, but they'd lost their way. Life had torn them apart in ways they hadn't understood at the time. "You were always the best part of my life," Maya continued. "Even after everything, even after we parted ways, I carried a piece of you with me. It wasn't just about love. It was about how you made me feel like I could be myself, that I could dream, that I could hope." John's heart was pounding in his chest now, and he leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. There was something in the air now, something between them that neither of them could ignore. But just as quickly as it came, the mood shifted. Maya paused again, her expression turning serious. "I've been thinking about all of this for so long, John, and I realized something. I want something more than memories. I want to know if we can build something together again. I want to take a chance on us." John's eyes widened, the shock of her words crashing over him like a wave. For a moment he was speechless, unsure of how to process what she had just said. Could it be? Was she really saying what he thought she was saying? Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. "I've been living a life and I'm happy. But the one thing I regret, the one thing I wish I could have done differently, was not fighting harder for us. And that's why I'm here, John. I've been thinking about this moment for years. And now I need to ask you something." John's heart was racing. His throat felt dry. He could barely breathe, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maya took a deep breath, her eyes searching his for an answer she needed. "I know it's crazy after all this time, but I can't help it. I need to know. John, will you marry me?" The words hung in the air, the question echoing in John's mind. The world seemed to pause. His heart stopped. He had heard her right, hadn't he? Did she just say what he thought she said? He blinked several times, his mind scrambling to process this shocking revelation. This was a proposal, but not in the way he had imagined. She was the one proposing. After all these years, after all the pain, after everything that had happened between them, Maya was standing there asking him to be her partner in life. John sat back in his chair, stunned, his mind reeling. He couldn't believe it. This wasn't just a simple question, it was a turning point, a life-altering moment. The woman he had loved, the one he had lost, was asking him to start over with her. But how? How could this be? What did this mean for them now? Was he ready to take this leap? Did he still love her? Did he still want her in his life? The silence between them stretched on as John searched for the words to answer. The weight of the decision felt heavier than anything he had ever experienced, and then slowly, just as Maya had done with him, he began to gather his thoughts. "I don't know what to say," he finally whispered, his voice shaking. I never thought you would come back like this. I never thought I would be here hearing you say those words." Maya's face softened, a look of vulnerability passing over her features. "I never thought I'd be here either," she said quietly. "But I'm here now, and I'm asking you because I want to see where we can go together. I want to try again. I want us to have the chance we never had." John leaned forward, his mind spinning. This was everything he had ever wanted, yet it felt so overwhelming. John sat there, his mind racing, his heart pounding in his chest. Maya's words hung in the air, echoing in his mind. "Will you marry me?" The question felt like an explosion, reverberating through every corner of his soul. He had never imagined that his life would bring him to this moment, to this unexpected proposal. He stared at Maya, trying to grasp the reality of what was happening. Her eyes were filled with hope and vulnerability, but John's mind was far away. The memories came rushing back, flooding his thoughts with images of the past. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to say. The silence stretched between them, but in his mind, 1,000 images flickered to life. The past had a way of creeping, up when you least expected it, and today was no different. Flashback. It had been the summer before everything fell apart. John and Maya had been inseparable, two souls caught in the whirlwind of youth, love, and promise. He remembered how they used to walk through the quiet streets of their city, holding hands, dreaming about their futures. They talked about everything, their hopes, their fears, the places they wanted to see, the lives they wanted to build. They had been a perfect match, or so they had thought. Their world had felt limitless, full of possibility. It was on one of those walks under the golden light of an evening sunset that Maya had first told him about her dreams of traveling the world, starting a business, finding herself. "I want to see Paris. I want to feel the rush of walking through the streets of a city that's always been a part of my dreams," she had said, her voice full of passion. John had smiled and taken her hand, feeling that spark of adventure, that promise of a future. He had promised her then that they would go together someday. He'd never imagined that life would tear them apart before they could make that promise a reality. But that summer, they were invincible. They laughed, they loved, they shared their lives with each other. Everything felt so simple, so right. Maya's laughter was music to his ears, and he found solace in the quiet moments between them. Just the two of them. No worries, no distractions. But things started to shift slowly, almost imperceptibly. It was like the world outside their bubble was slowly closing in on them. Maya began spending more time at work, more time trying to build her career. She was driven, focused, and John couldn't help but admire her for it. But the late nights, the phone calls, the growing distance, it all began to take its toll. John had tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a phase. But one evening, as they sat in the same cafe they'd always visited, Maya had looked at him with a seriousness he hadn't seen before. "John," she began, her voice quieter than usual, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About us. About everything." He remembered the way she hesitated, her fingers playing with the edge of her napkin. She looked unsure, almost lost, and it made his heart ache. "I've been offered a job in another city," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "It's a great opportunity. It's everything I've worked for." John had been silent for a long time, his thoughts spinning. He could see the excitement in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Something he couldn't name. Fear, maybe? Or uncertainty? "What does that mean for us?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. The question hung in the air, thick with the weight of their love, their dreams, their shared memories. "I don't know," Maya had said, looking down at the table. "I don't know what it means for us, but I think I need to do this. For me. I need to figure out who I am, what I want." John's heart sank. He had known something like this was coming, but hearing it out loud hurt more than he could have imagined. It wasn't that he didn't understand her need for independence. He did. It was just that the thought of losing her, of losing what they had built together, felt like a void opening up in his chest. The flashback faded as John snapped back to the present. Maya was still sitting across from him, her expression unreadable now. He could see the same girl he had fallen in love with sitting there. But so much had changed. The years had passed, and they had both evolved, grown in different ways. He knew it wasn't the same. It couldn't be the same. But those feelings, the love, the connection, the way she made him feel, those had never left him. He took a deep breath, his hand shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. His mind was still reeling. How could he answer her? Could he ever go back to the version of their relationship that had been so perfect once? Was that even possible after all this time, after all that had happened between them? Maya had always been the ambitious one, the one with a clear path ahead of her. He remembered how proud he had been of her when she got that promotion, when she decided to move across the country for a new opportunity. But he also remembered how empty it had felt when she left, how hollow his life had become without her. In it, they had both tried to move on, him with his work, her with her new life. but nothing ever seemed to fill the space she had once occupied in his heart. He remembered their last conversation before she left. She had stood at the door looking at him with that same quiet intensity she had now. "John," she had said, her voice shaking, "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to leave you behind. But I have to do this for myself. Please understand." At the time, he had nodded, his heart breaking in silence. He had kissed her goodbye, not knowing that it would be the last time he would ever feel her warmth against him. And now, here she was, sitting across from him, asking him to go back to a time he wasn't sure he could revisit, asking him to believe in something that had been lost, something that felt so far beyond reach. John's eyes met Maya's again. She was waiting, her eyes searching his, filled with a quiet desperation. She was asking him to forgive her for leaving, for not being able to make it work before. She was asking him to trust that they could start again. But the question remained. Could they really? Could they go back to what they once had? Or would the scars of the past be too much to overcome? The memories, the love, the pain, they all swirled in his mind. The weight of the decision was almost unbearable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, John spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know, Maya. I don't know if I can ever go back to what we were. But what I do know is that I never stopped loving you. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to find out." John sat there, his hands shaking slightly as he looked at Maya. The weight of her proposal still hung in the air between them, heavy and unresolved. He had spent so much time lost in the memories of the past, caught between the man he had been and the man he was becoming, that he hadn't truly allowed himself to see the woman sitting across from him. The woman who had come back into his life with a question he never expected. Her eyes, filled with hope and vulnerability, were watching him closely as if searching for an answer, a sign that he would meet her halfway. The silence stretched, but it was different now. He wasn't lost in his own thoughts anymore. He could hear his heartbeat loud and steady, thumping in his chest. He could feel the pull of something undeniable, something that had always been there, buried beneath the surface. The connection between them was still as strong as it had ever been. Finally, John broke the silence. "Maya," he said softly, his voice trembling, "I need you to understand something. I never stopped loving you, but I also never stopped carrying the hurt of the past." Maya nodded, her eyes brimming with understanding. "I know," she whispered. "I know, John. And I'm sorry for everything I put you through, for leaving, for not realizing sooner how much I needed you." John took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the emotions flooding through him. He had spent years wondering about her, about them, about whether it was possible to go back to what they had once shared. But now, sitting across from her, he realized that life didn't always offer second chances, but this one, this moment, felt like something worth fighting for. "I've spent so much time thinking about the what-ifs," he continued, his eyes locked on hers. "What if I had fought harder for you? What if I had said the right things when you needed to hear them? What if I hadn't let you go so easily?" Maya reached out, gently placing her hand over his. Her touch was warm, grounding him in the present, pulling him out of the whirlwind of regrets and fears that had consumed him for so long. "You didn't know what was going to happen," she said quietly, her voice full of understanding. "I didn't know either, but now we do, John. We know what's in front of us, and we have the chance to make something beautiful out of the pieces we still have." John looked at her, his heart opening with a vulnerability he hadn't allowed himself to feel in so long. Could this be real? Could they really start again after all they had been through? He exhaled slowly, his mind settling as he made the decision that had been forming in his heart. "You're right," he said softly. "We can't change the past, but we can still write the next chapter, Maya, together." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of hope, of the weight of years of uncertainty finally lifting. She smiled, a smile that was full of warmth, full of everything they had shared, everything they were about to build together. It was the same smile that had captured his heart all those years ago. "You don't know how long I've wanted to hear you say that," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've missed you so much, John. I never stopped believing in us. I couldn't." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat there, two people who had once been lost to each other, now finding their way back. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving them in the quiet space of their shared understanding. John reached for her hand, his grip firm and sure, and as their fingers intertwined, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't perfect. Life would never be perfect. But they had a second chance, a chance to build something new from the foundation they had once shared. "I'm not perfect," John said, his voice low but steady. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you, by my side." Maya's smile grew wider, her eyes shining with happiness. "And I'll be there, John, every step of the way. We'll face it all, together." The cafe around them was quiet again, but this time it felt peaceful. The quiet wasn't filled with uncertainty or unanswered questions. It was filled with possibility. The future lay ahead of them, waiting to be written, one step at a time. And in this moment, surrounded by the bustle of life, John and Maya knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They stood up together, hands still intertwined. And as they walked out of the cafe into the cool, evening air, John couldn't help but feel the weight of the years of longing and heartache lift from his shoulders. He had found his way back to the one person who had always understood him, who had always been a part of his heart, and now they had a chance to build a future together. John looked at Maya as they walked side by side, their steps in sync, and he couldn't help but smile. This wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of something new, something beautiful. And he knew without a doubt that this time they wouldn't let go. This time, they would cherish each other every single day, for as long as they could. They reached the car, and, as Maya turned to look at him one last time, her eyes full of love and promise, John took a deep breath and whispered, "Thank you for coming back to me, for giving us this chance." Maya's smile was the answer. There were no words needed. They had found each other again, and that was all that mattered. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the world, John knew that they were exactly where they were meant to be.